welcome to Unit 2. Can you believe we are already there? In this unit, we are going to, for our Bible Play Challenge, focus on our theme, which is accountability. What does accountability mean? Accountability means living up to your responsibility, doing that right thing. Maybe you've heard the term accountability partner, and that's someone who's gonna come into your life and maybe help you to live out your purpose, or help you get through something, or maybe even help you with that thing that you're struggling with. Whatever it may be, they're gonna help hold you accountable to help you not do that anymore. That's the term accountability partner. I know, it's big. So to learn this a little bit more, we're gonna look at a story in the Old Testament. So in Unit 1, we were in the New Testament. Now we're gonna journey on back to the Old Testament, where we find someone who has a little struggle with accountability. He's a little unaccountable, then he's kind of accountable, but he misses out on blessings by having a bad attitude. We're looking at a whale-sized story. That's right, it's the story of Jonah. So really quickly, Jonah was given this task by God to go talk to the people of Nineveh and preach to them. They were known as a wicked people. So they were probably maybe a little scary, maybe a little intimidating, I don't know, but Jonah did not want to go. And so instead of living up to that, instead of being accountable to this thing that God has given him in front of him, he decided, I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna go to the town of Joppa, I'm gonna get on a boat, and I'm gonna run away from this calling. And that didn't work out so well. So Jonah gets on the boat and a storm comes, and the people on the boat are scared and they run down, and Jonah is sleeping. That's really weird, he's sleeping. And they say, pray to your God, pray to your God. And they decide that they should cast lots to figure out who was responsible for this. And unexpectedly, Jonah's lot was cast. And so he said, throw me into the sea. Just throw me in. And they said, we can't do that, we can't do that. But they eventually threw him in, and a whale came, or a big fish came, and swallowed Jonah. And you know what? This is an example of God being gracious. Jonah was running from what God wanted him to do, and God provided in this moment. Now, this was an interesting provision, but what it did was it kept Jonah alive. It also gave him some quiet time to reflect maybe on things that he had done. And in scripture, we see him talking to God. So Jonah's in the belly of the fish, he's alive. It might have been stinky, it might not have been comfortable, but he made it, and the fish threw him up, ew. And in that moment, Jonah decides, I'm gonna go to Nineveh. So he goes to Nineveh, he preaches to them, and guess what? The people of Nineveh changed their ways. They turned from their wicked ways. It worked. Oh my goodness, that's incredible. You would think Jonah would have been happy about that, but instead, Jonah got grumpy. He said, God, I knew you would be compassionate. He knew the character of God. He knew God is a gracious and compassionate God. And he was upset that God was going to have compassion and grace on the people. And so he went up to a hill, separated himself from everybody, and said, I'm just gonna sit here and see what happens. I'm gonna see what happens to the city. He left this joy-filled moment of people turning their lives and went on a hill to be alone and be grumpy. But God is so compassionate, and God provided Jonah with a tree. And that tree gave him shade, and Jonah loved that tree. And by the morning, a worm had gotten to it, and the tree withered up, and Jonah got mad again. And we see the end where Jonah and God are having a conversation, and it kind of just ends. And here's what we can learn from this story. 1, to be accountable to the things God has called us to do. Now that might mean just knowing what is right and wrong, and scripture gives us a roadmap for what is right and wrong, and the things we should do and the things we shouldn't do, and keeping ourselves accountable to what scripture says. It also could be being accountable to the thing that maybe God is calling you to do. Maybe God's calling you to go talk with that new person who seems a little scared, and you might be scared to go talk to them, but maybe God's calling you to go be a friend in that moment. Maybe God's calling you to share your story with someone. Being accountable to what God has called you to do. Here's the second thing we're gonna learn. Jonah is alone through most of this story. We don't see him surrounded by friends really at any point. And this is an encouragement to find friends who will hold you accountable. Those friends who will hold you accountable to doing the right thing, to looking at scripture, to having that deep relationship with God, to doing what God's called you to do, and maybe even that person who's gonna hold you accountable and say, hey, that might not be the path that's great. Or maybe you're struggling with something and that friend is there to say, hey, I'm gonna help you get back on track. And here's the third thing, that accountability with a joyful heart. Jonah did it. Jonah was accountable in the end in how he did go to the people of Nineveh, but he missed out because of his attitude. His perspective and his priorities were so out of line. He did it, but he did it with an attitude. So to step into what God is calling you to do with a joyful heart, and know this, that we serve a compassionate, gracious God. So that's our story. Now it's up to you to retell the story of Jonah in a whale-sized way. Be big about it, have fun with it. You could make it a comedy, you could make it a modern story, you could go back and make a big old fish, or maybe you want to play the fish. It's up to you. I look forward to hearing you retell the story of Jonah and his accountability.